All right, so here we are. This is the next episode of the Liberty Sports podcast. As you can see, we're in the same room, and here we are. So Jake made the trek up from. Well, I say he made the trek up. So let me tell you a little something about this. All right, after work on a Friday, I drive down to pick him up in the rain, pouring rain,
Oh,
the whole entire time
nonstop.
on the way down,
Nonstop rain.
and then get to Orlando, 2 hours, load the truck up, turn right back around, start heading back. Still raining, and Friday night drove down, came back, we made it here Sunday night, and so now you're in the Ohio's now, and so we got summer. In a lot of summer plans. Now that we're here, we can do a lot of different things. Go on site, do some stuff out in the field, and up until the move happens down to Columbus in September. But so OH.
IO, baby. Yeah, we're here. We are live and in living color. It's a little weird. I'm not gonna lie. I was comfortable down there in O-Town. You see, I got my Magic shirt on. I told my Orlando peeps that I wasn't gonna stop repping, even though I left town. So, all my Orlando folk, miss you, love you. Thanks for watching the pod. Thanks for always supporting. I'll be back soon. Don't worry. But you boys got to get some business done over there in C-Bus. So go Bucks and. We got some fun stuff. It's going to be a fun couple of months and years planned ahead. I'm excited to see what the future holds. And speaking of what the future holds, how about those Detroit Tigers, baby?
Yeah, best record in baseball through the first 50 games. It's been fun. It's been exciting. And the thing is too about the Tigers is we haven't even seen
right. Yeah.
What they're fully capable of.
Because we haven't even been fully healthy.
Right. I mean, that was kind of like one of the things at the end of last year with all the injuries and stuff. And so now we start out this year again. We're like, oh boy, here we go again. Yep. Jake Rogers, who controls that pitching staff and everything else.
As if we didn't deal with enough of the injury trauma with the Lions.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, it's just kind of bruised and battled, and that's what Detroit is, and that. So, but so we run through the list, right? We run through, Casey Mize and Veerling and Parker Meadows, and we sign Webb in the offseason, and he doesn't even get to play, and all of these things. But you know what? One of the bright spots is you see Javi Baez, who, he shut him down at the end of last year. He struggled for a year and a half, couple of years, and got the hip surgery, got himself right, and he's doing whatever, goes out to center field, looks like he's been playing it forever, and he's having fun again, right?
It's incredible, and he is having fun again, and it's a great sight to see, because we had talked about it last year, and even years prior, we're like, man, it's just not the same Baez. It's not the Puerto Rican World Baseball Classic Baez that we watched. It's not the Cubs Baez that we watched, and it was just kind of like, what's going on here? Like, is it a mental thing?
He didn't look like he was having fun,
right? He wasn't having fun, so we asked ourselves, is it a mental thing? Is it, obviously there's a physical injury going on there. Obviously he had the surgery that he needed to have. He took the postseason off last year. He wasn't, there for that run. And, we have the off season. We head into spring training, and now we head into this season. You throw him in center field. He's playing unbelievable. I mean, he's like prime Austin Jackson out there. And he again, and like you mentioned, the most important part is it looked like he's just having fun out there again. And I mean, he's also more disciplined at the plate. He's taking pitches. He's getting walked more often, which is and he's letting pitches come through that he would have never watched come through, in years prior, which is great. And so it's awesome to see the Tigers continue that trend from last season after everybody said, they're going to be, they just got hot. It's a fluke and this, that, and the third, and da. So it's cool to watch that happen. Now, on the complete opposite side of things, though, you've got the Orioles, which we both picked in our way too early predictions, which apparently were way too early because holy smokes, they are a flaming pile of garbage right now.
Yeah, and I don't understand what's going on over there in Baltimore. I mean, you lost some players, right? You lose Corbin Burns, you lose Anthony Santander, but you feel like you had this young core that was coming up, right? And you're just like, okay, well,
Hmm.
we just got to get better with these guys, develop them more, and everything like that. Well, Jackson Holiday is taking that step, and he's playing well, and
Seems
he's
like he's the only one.
and but it's brutal, and you got the Orioles, and it's not a good start to the season when you're in the same conversation as the White Sox and the Rockies, right? So I mean,
Brutal.
you're getting to a situation to where you're almost going to be in the same conversation as the party animals and the Savannah
You might as well
bananas
be.
and stuff like that. So Texas tailgaters and whatnot. But yeah, so it's I don't know what's going on with them. I
Yeah.
don't know. Um, you know,
Is it a clubhouse thing? Is there things that we don't know? Is there some animosity in the clubhouse between players, right? Or are players not getting along?
you
Is it a
fire the
chemistry?
manager, so like okay, let's do
Could be.
that. And 3 managers fired so far already here in the first 50 games of the year, and then we got Donnie Kelly baby over here in Pittsburgh who like to get ejected from just about every
Every
game
game.
he manages. He's on pace for 37
At
ejections in the year,
which is more ejections than wins that the Rockies and White Sox and maybe Orioles will
yeah.
have. But you talk about Pittsburgh and Donnie Kelly baby, former Tiger, outstanding guy. Saw some rumors, not sure how credible it is, but the account that I saw it from seemed to be pretty reputable. A lot of mutual followers of actual players themselves and other accounts that are very credible. Skeens supposedly had secretly looked for a trade. And now you think about all these teams that are at the top right now that could use a guy like that. I mean, we talk windows in sports, and we talk teams that are at the top right now, like Mets. You got your Mets, you got your Yankees, you got your Phillies, you got your Tigers, you got your Dodgers, and this, that, and then you got a guy like Skeens who supposedly wants out of Pittsburgh. Two questions for you. Number one, why does he want out of Pittsburgh, and what does Pittsburgh do with handling that situation? And number two, where do you think he could end up if this does turn out to be true?
Yeah, why does he want out of Pittsburgh, right? Well, I mean, it's obvious, right? You don't want to be that guy that gets his career buried in a place. I mean, you talk about Mike Trout. How many years do we see Mike Trout? Obviously he's been battling injuries and stuff like that,
Of course.
which is frustrating. But even when he's healthy, it's like we never get to see Mike Trout in the playoffs and stuff. And I think that's what is the writings on the wall for Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh. And so and Pittsburgh, if you look at it, like we've talked about this, and we talked about it last year, and we talked about it during the offseason. I think that the way that the Major League Baseball is going as far as starting pitchers, yes, you want to have good starting pitching, but also at the same time, it's not a situation anymore to where starting pitching drives what happens with your team, because your starting pitchers go out there every fifth day. They pitch maybe 7 innings. What we're seeing with Paul Skeens is, I mean, he's like what 2-6, and
Yeah,
and
it's not a good.
They've scored 17 runs.
Yeah, it's not a good record, and it's not his fault.
Right. So what happens is, so if we're Pittsburgh and we're like, okay, well, if we want to compete, we can't do it on a guy that we can only rely on for 3/4 of a game and every 5 games, right? So we need a lot more talent. We need to load up this roster. So I think it's yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal that he sought a trade, because it makes sense, and it also makes sense for Pittsburgh. And
It
I think
does.
Pittsburgh's going to want to do that as well, because you right now, especially where he's at, you can get a lot for him. You go to a team and say, okay, well, listen, we want to look at your top 5 prospects and see how many of those can you throw in to bring to us. And I think that's going to happen. Obviously, it's going to be a team that's going to want to be able to keep him long term. So you got a situation to where, obviously, that brings in all the usual suspects, the Bostons, the New York teams, the Dodgers, and those guys. So, yeah, will it happen this year? Will it happen before the trade deadline? Will he finish the year with Pittsburgh? I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it hasn't been reported. on any mainstream media or anything. It's, just been kind of an outsider's post, but it makes sense, right? And then you talk about other guys here that probably aren't going to finish the season on their current team. Nolan Arenado. There were already talks before the season even started of him leaving St. Louis there, and the Tigers were the favorite. And then fast forward 50 games, still is the favorite to go to the Tigers. So the thing that I always say about baseball, right, is you could have all the best players in the world, right? You could take your all-star lineup and you could put them on one team. It doesn't mean that you're going to drive success. Baseball is such a chemistry-driven sport, and it's such a team sport that you could put the best guys out there. It doesn't mean you're going to succeed. So you look at a team like the Tigers, who really are not full of superstars, right? They're just a bunch of young guys who get along well and are playing great football. Detroit,
you know what?
They might as well be, right?
They got guys that could play football.
They might as well be, right? But they're playing great baseball. So where does a guy like Arenado fit into that, right? Because you look at the age of the team, you look at the star power of the team, and then you look at the age and the star power and the history of Arenado. I mean, what are some of the concerns, but also what are some of the benefits of that pairing there?
So I mean the big thing is that any concern that you have is, okay, so are we going to disrupt what we have going on now? Like, things are going good, so yes, you want to always get better, but is it going to disrupt what we have going on now? I think with Arenado. And maybe a little bit of the offseason, because he said that wasn't one of the teams that he wanted to go to in the offseason. But I think that as things progress, like, okay, he thought maybe he was like, okay, well, this was a flash in the pan. I want to go. I'm getting late in my career. I want to have a chance to win a World Series, but now he's saying that they're for real. So maybe that changes things a little bit. But one thing that we know about Arenado is, number one, he's going to give you everything he's got. He's a good character guy. He's a good clubhouse guy. Every team that he's been on, they love him. What he gives you is he gives you that veteran presence that the Tigers don't have right now. But he also, the only spot on the Tigers, the only position on the Tigers that is not nailed down with some type of platoon or everyday player is third base.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you bring in an Arenado. So you solidify that position on defense, but then also you get a bat that's a consistent bat, and it helps protect in the lineup.
Yeah.
Torkelson and Green and these guys. I think all around it makes sense. All around it would be a great fit. I think it's something that I would love to see. I would love to see it happen before the trade deadline. And we'll see how that progresses as time goes on. Now here's the problem: if St. Louis gets hot,
right? That there you go.
Because what we back in the day, there was teams that were out of it 50 games into the year. I mean, we have the Rockies and the White Sox and potentially the Orioles and the Pirates, but now with the expanded playoffs, teams are on that fringe a lot later into the year and everything else. So
I mean, look at us last year, Tigers last year,
right?
Yeah. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. And then you talk about teams being hot and teams that are just good, and what we're looking at as far as World Series champs and World Series teams here. You talk about your Dodgers, right? You talk about your Yankees, you talk about your Mets. Obviously this is exciting times here for the Tigers. I mean, the Padres could make some noise here if they can get over that hump of beating their, they could throw a rock to LA. So if they could beat them, Philadelphia, though, the Phillies are a team here that you talk about windows, right? You had your World Series loss to the Astros, followed by the Diamondbacks, and then the Mets right after. And you look at that lineup, you look at that team, you look at that roster. How many more years of almost can you put up with before something's got to give?
Yeah, you can't. There's none. There's no more years left. I think that this is win or bust for them, because you're already having a conversation about Schwarber, right? Like, where's Schwarber going to go next year? That's what everybody's talking about right now. That's going to be the big name in free agency and stuff like that. So they're already having conversations to where they're resigned to not keep him, which is it reminds me of those teams from the early teens.
Oh, the Tigers.
The Tigers,
Yeah.
and that where you have this roster, you have this pitching staff, you have everything. It's like, why do you not win a World Series?
Right.
Like, you only make it to one during that time frame and everything else. And
So frustrating.
And when you talk about, because you talked about, the Astros lost, the Diamondbacks lost, and the Mets lost. Well, what do you notice about that, right? Like, so you lose in the World Series, you lose in the championship series, and then you lose in the divisional round. So you're regressing, and that's not a good thing, too. Like, so, but this team is built to win now because they're not young, they're not old, they're veterans, they're a good clubhouse. Everybody loves everybody.
Yep.
You've got talent across the board.
It's one of the most fun clubhouses too. I mean, these guys are outstanding.
If you're going to party with any clubhouse, probably the Phillies or the Tigers are the two clubhouses you want to party with.
I mean, I obviously from Detroit, love my Tigers, but I'm going to go Phillies for obvious reasons, and that's obvious.
Yeah,
and that's obvious.
Castellanos and Harper, your guy over there. But,
well, you get
a fangirl. We're going to have the 45-minute fangirl session.
No. I'm just saying that's my biggest concern here. Yes, I love Castellanos, love Schwarber, love Stott, I love these guys, right? Bomer, Raffy, these are a bunch of great guys out there. But Trey Turner, and of course my glorious king, Bryce Harper. The issue here is, like you mentioned, they're not young, they're not old.
Right.
These are guys that can go elsewhere and contribute.
Yeah.
And contribute to a team and win. Right, so it's Philly. Yeah, you're right. Philly's in a very, very, very tight spot here. I almost, if it's not this year, you're right. I think it's bust. I think after this season, if it doesn't happen, you gotta start looking elsewhere, and you gotta start looking about rebuilding this franchise. And you gotta look, because think about it. That lineup you get rid of half those guys. You got a bunch of prospects coming in, but Philadelphia fans, you got to be ready, because it'll be rough in baseball going forward. You got the Eagles right now, but if they do decide to go that route, they could things in Philadelphia baseball could change drastically.
Well, because you have to make that decision, right? Like, so when do we pull the trigger on that? Because you got your big money guy and Harper tied up, right? And he's a Philly for life. But how many years does he have left, right? Like, do you want to spend the twilight of his career rebuilding, or do you think that you have the ability to rebuild while he's still contributing and make another run? And if you do, then you're going to have to do it sooner rather than later. Yep. So that's why I think this year is kind of that window, right?
Yeah, I agree.
That's the close out of the window is this year. It's World Series or bust for them, because, again, you're going to start seeing some of these guys be picked off in free agency and stuff like that, moving forward. But
yeah, definitely. And that's the name of the game, right? You talk about windows, and we've seen it, and when we track back to football, talk about it with Buffalo, and I'm seeing a very similar, corresponding thing here. It's almost like the Phillies are the Bills of baseball. It's what I'm getting at. Lovable team, respectable guys, everything talented, but just can't get over that hump. So, but speaking of baseball, right? Now we. Coming from a young guy, I want to ask a traditionalist, right? There's been a lot of talk here about, we tried it in spring training here. Now we're 50 games in. We tried it in spring training, but challenging balls and strikes, right? You do the old tap, you get to challenge the balls and strikes. Now, there are a few times where it ended up benefiting the batter. There were times where the ump actually got it right. Now, Angel Hernandez is gone, so of course we can hold our breath a little bit. But it's an interesting thing, because we talk about how technology changes sports, right? You got the UFL challenging penalties, kind of similar situation, challenging balls and strikes. So you take a sport like baseball, which is such a traditional sport, and America's pastime. How do you think introducing technology? Because we already did the pitch clock, right? So now we're adding something else into it. How do you think that would work? Do you like it? Do you not? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, like you said, that one, baseball is unique in the fact that it's a social sport, right? Like, so it's one of those things to where it's like when you go, like you're gonna go and you're gonna enjoy it live and in person more than you are on TV. You're gonna converse with the people that you're there in between innings and between bats and stuff like that, and those kinds of things. So when and also it's very traditional as far as what's the stats and the numbers are what matter in the game. He's somebody a 300 hitter. Does somebody hit 40 home runs and those kinds of things? So those things matter. So when you start bringing in the new technology and these new things, it's like, okay, so everybody who's a traditionalist like me, like I didn't like putting the runner on second base. I didn't like the pitch clock. I didn't like, I did like challenging plays, certain plays, especially after Galarraga. I'm like, let's absolutely challenge some plays and stuff like that. But I've learned to like those things. I like the runner on second base adds excitement, and being able to challenge plays is good. And then the pitch clock, it's not even a factor really. Like it's just you don't even notice that that's a thing.
Right. It's just it's become so second nature at this point. Like I've completely forgot it's even been added to it.
Right. And so I think that what we saw in spring training is we saw that okay, you had 3 challenges, right? So you could challenge balls and strikes. You had 3 challenges. It happened quick. It's just boom, you put it up on the screen, you look at it, okay, yeah, it's there. It's not. Okay, move on. And I think that if you have the 3 aside and if you're correct, then you keep them, and if you're wrong, then you lose them. And I think that that's a good thing. I don't think let's not do it on every pitch, because to your point, the UFL, I think that you're challenging penalties, you're challenging this, you're challenging, and the flow of the game is gone in the UFL. It's kind of difficult to watch a little bit. But the big thing so I would like to see it. I would like to see it stick around. I'd like to see it bring back. We might see it for the playoffs.
Right, just like they did with the base runner, the extra base runner in extra innings. Yeah.
The big thing is you have to get the parameters around it right, which they've done in these other things, and it's worked. So I think that the biggest thing for me is this is something that, like, if this would have been in play when I was playing.
Oh, good Lord.
Because what happened was, so like I threw 18 pitches as a pitcher in my career, and I walked 4 batters and I hit 2. So 16 were called balls.
So you just can't pitch, is what you're saying.
No. What happened was this ump squeezed me. If I would have been able, if I'd have been able to go like this and challenge, like I'm painting corners, and you're not painting anything. Listen, you'd never seen the Greg Maddux out there like painting corners. When I left college, I was getting ready to start a painting company. We'll paint your trim, and that's it. We'll call it good, because that's what I was doing. And this ump had never seen. You don't see something like that. You're not used to it, so you're squeezing me and everything else. If I was able to go like this, then I wouldn't have had to turn into an offensive player and get in the batter's box. And when I get to college, I see a knuckleball for the first time. Black Magic's coming at me. This thing's doing God knows what, and I fall into the batter's box in a fetal position and like that. And they're like, you know what, this sport might not be for you, because I couldn't hit a curveball to save my life or anything that moved. But if I would have been able to go like this, challenge that umpire. That umpire, which he might have even been.
Was he garbage?
He might have been a little. He was garbage. He could have been a little drunk. I don't know. So this is what I'm saying. So it changes the trajectory of careers.
Oh God Almighty!
And it changes the trajectory of innings and games and at bats. So let's do it, and let's get it right. But let's be strategic about it again. Just like we talk about, like you can't just go willy-nilly. You can't have the Wild West and all this other stuff out here. You gotta rein it in. But I think that they did a good job in the spring training, and I think that we'll probably see it in the playoffs, and then that'll parlay into it being into the future. But again, if I could go like this, then that ump who's hitting a flask or doing some wacky stuff in the parking lot before he comes out to the field, then I'm as opposed to so it's important.
All right. Well, yeah. Put your delusion aside there. I think
it's facts. It's facts. Literally,
this is exactly what a delusional person would say.
What happens? This is changing career
it's
paths.
just not at all the situation of it. But
to go one way or the other.
regardless, listen, you stay
I
on.
gotta tell you, I have to tell you. So that was baseball that changed my career path because that umpire, and I couldn't go like this. As a story with the basketball career was like, I'm talking to my high school coach, Coach Kevin West, God bless you, and he says coming towards the end of my career and in high school, and talking to him about let's go college visits and stuff like that and everything like that. He goes, Eric, I gotta tell you something. There's two kinds of players. There's those who can and those who can't. Those who can go on to play, and those who can't go on to coach. And he looks at me and he goes, you're going to be one hell of a coach.
Exactly. You don't need to challenge balls and strikes for that, skipper.
Because I knew I couldn't jump over a newspaper.
There you go.
And those kinds of things. But again, when I'm on the mound, see, this is what I'm talking about. Like that's a situation to where it's like then you try to make something happen that can't happen because you can't go like this.
You're just all sorts of nonsense going on here at this point. But you bring
painting the black.
You're not. You can't paint. You can't pitch, and you can't play basketball either. But while we're on the topic of basketball, how about this? We got the conference finals here for the NBA and the NHL. We don't want to leave hockey out of it. Los Tic-Pac, eh? The Red Blacks, eh? But I got to love a little Canadian action, His favorite song is "Oh Canada." That's his karaoke go-to outside of tequila. So we got a great series here, Knicks and Pacers, which has great history to it. And then you've got OKC, Minnesota, and then you go over to the ice. You've got Edmonton and Dallas and Florida and Carolina. Some pretty interesting matchups here. Let's start with the basketball. I'll let you handle the basketball. I'll take over the hockey. I know you definitely are having a little nostalgia here with the Knicks and Pacers series.
I love it. I love it. I was excited, 80s, 90s guy, and I love it. And the fact that we've got Pacers, Knicks in the conference finals, it's a beautiful thing. And you got both teams that are very good, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, this is going to be a really good series, right? And you're excited about it and all the build up to it. Like, okay, conference finals, you got Reggie Miller, you got John Starks, you got Spike Lee, you got all these things coming back into the fold and all this other kind of stuff. And you're just like, I hope it lives up to it. Boy, I'm going to tell you, game one.
Game one was great. We at the time of this recording, we were watching it straight ahead here in our Libeerty Sports HQ. That was an exciting game.
It was unbelievable. So the Knicks start pulling away midway through the fourth quarter, and you're like, okay, well, it was good or whatever. And then all of a sudden, Pacers come roaring back. Halliburton hits the three, bounces. Almost hits the rafters of the Garden, comes back in, boom, three, game over. He's doing the red choke and everything else. Oh, his toes on the line. We're going to overtime. And then it's back and forth. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, this is good stuff. This is what the NBA needs. This is what it needs. It doesn't need LeBron James handpicking 2 or 3 other players to play with them. It doesn't need, the Golden State Warriors having every free agent go and join them and everything else, and the same teams and the same players and these super teams and all this other stuff. Let's get back to what basketball was when it was like these teams, they hated each other. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And when you're bouncing from team to team to team and you're hand picking and all this other kind of stuff, like you don't have rivalries.
Right. You can't.
You know what I mean? Do you like even when Dennis Rodman joined the Bulls? I mean, like the big thing, like Scottie Pippen hated it, didn't want it to happen, and Michael Jordan was like, "Yeah, we don't have to like the guy, but he can rebound.
Right.
So let's just deal with it and win a championship. I can win a championship with him. Let's do it." Yeah. But then, so this is what I mean, and it's awesome. It was a great game one. I hope the series goes 7 games. I hope they're all like that because this is fantastic, and I love it.
Shift over to the other side there. You've got Oklahoma City and Minnesota. It's an interesting thing because it's kind of like you got a team like Minnesota who really isn't supposed to be here. They're a 6th seed. Anthony Edwards has kind of put the team on his back, but they've had some great additions. Like Rudy Gobert has kind of had a second life. life here in Minnesota. They've played well, and then of course you got the young kids out there in Oklahoma City. SGA out of Kentucky,
MVP.
yeah, MVP.
MVP.
So it's that series right there. Don't throw it on the back burner because it's got some excitement there too. What are your takeaways from Game 1? Because it was a pretty interesting Game 1, believe it or not.
Yeah, and I think that what you're going to see, what you see in Game 1 is kind of what you saw throughout the entire playoffs so far with OKC, right? Like, I mean, they're young guys.
Yeah.
And so with young guys, what happens is you get ups and downs with them, and you saw it in that Denver series where you had good games, bad games, and everything else. In the first half, Minnesota has the lead, and I think what the stat was, they were the first one.
Yeah, so they have the largest win, the largest point differential win after trailing at halftime in the playoffs, is what I thought it was, or maybe in Thunder history. I don't know if it was NBA history.
It could be in the Western Conference. But anyway, but that's the point, though. That's like the whole point behind it. That's what this team is. That's what they do, right? They're up and down, and they were up and down within that game, and were able to pull away and win big. But when they're bad, and when they're good. So what we're looking at in this series is, okay, Can Minnesota stay level enough to take advantage of when OKC is down and hang around just enough when OKC is up? And so what's going to happen is you might have 7 games where there's blowouts every single game, but it goes 7 games because of that. Whereas I think with Indiana and New York, you're going to have. Yeah, but you could have 7 overtime games.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they're going to be 2 completely different series, but I think they're both going to be very entertaining series for different reasons. But I'm all in on Indiana and New York. And, I mean,
of course. I mean, the second that matchup was set, of course it was. You had Oklahoma City and Minnesota. We're definitely going to be kind of thrown on the back burner there, and that's no takeaway from those two teams there and the talent there. But there's just no history, right? So you've got that history at it, and Game 1 did not disappoint. And then shifting gears over here to the hockey, who are the 4 that we got here in hockey?
You got. Well, I'll tell you who you don't have,
right? Because this has been his problem here, which is why I've been more invested into the Stanley Cup playoffs than he has, just for this reason alone.
Yeah, well, I think that the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best tournament in sports. I think that it's exciting, but you look at it and you're like, okay, well, there's no Detroit Red Wings, there's no Chicago Blackhawks, there's no Boston Bruins, there's no New York Rangers, there's no Philadelphia Flyers, there's no Pittsburgh Penguins. You got Montreal, who had a cup of coffee and then went home, and then you got Toronto Maple Leafs, who like to cower in the closet and pee themselves when they see a Game 7. So it's like, so so this is what we're looking at here, and but here we are. We've got. Over in the East, we've got Florida, your Florida Panthers.
Let's go Cats!
And the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Hartford the Whale, as I'd like to refer to them. But so what we have is, so you got that. Florida won last year, the defending champs, everything else. You got that storyline, all that kind of stuff. Carolina kind of is coming out of nowhere. On the West, you're looking at, you got Edmonton and Dallas. Edmonton, the Great North's only hope, left. I mean, can they break the streak? Was it Montreal?
Montreal was the last
or
team,
something like that. I forget off the top of my head.
We us Americans definitely made Canada well aware of that stat after the 4 nations face off when Canada had go ahead and beat us there. So we definitely made it well known. So Edmonton's their last hope, right?
Yep.
And listen, we had Florida and Edmonton in the Cup last year. Fantastic series. Would I be opposed to a rematch? Of course not. 1, because the series was great, and 2, because let's go Cats, right? However, from an outside perspective of a hockey fan, I think it would be very interesting to see something like a Dallas-Carolina Cup, based on the fact that it's 2 newer teams, right? And I don't think anybody predicted Carolina to be in this situation, right? They kind of, you mentioned all the teams that you're used to seeing that weren't involved. Well, you had Ovechkin and you had Washington, right? Ovechkin breaks Gretzky's record. You're thinking, okay, maybe this could be some sort of Cinderella type thing. Almost a perfect send off for Ovechkin, right? He breaks Gretzky's record, wins a Stanley Cup. How does he not retire? Like that would have been Cinderella's story, right? Carolina crushes their plans and goes ahead and they spank him on the bottom. But then you look at teams like Florida and Edmonton, who you kind of already had predicted to get to this point, right? After last season's Stanley Cup, and then after the way that they carried themselves throughout the season, you're like, okay, we're looking, you kind of almost had the thought of a rematch in your mind. So seeing teams like Dallas and Carolina put up a fight there and possibly completely shift gears there and shake everything up would be really exciting to see. But I think that the way that the both series have started has been pretty awesome. Because at least for me, going for Florida, you had a great win there in Game 1, 5-2, and then you go to Game 1 here of Edmonton, Dallas, and boy, what happened to Edmonton there?
Yeah, Edmonton goes into the third period and they're up 3-1, and then all of a sudden Dallas says, "Yeah, I don't think so." And they score 5 goals in that third period and win 6
goals in
one of them was an empty netter, but hey, that's you got to get yourself to that point to be able to take advantage of an empty netter, right? So, but yeah, I mean. Here's the thing, like, is as a traditionalist and everything else like that, like the last team that really, Edmonton is kind of like that second group of teams that kind of came into the NHL.
Yeah.
So they're part of that. So so I would like to see that because you got the history of Gretzky and Messier and all those guys and stuff like that. But you keep the streak of non-Canadian teams winning. Is that something that, so I mean, that's kind of where my storylines are on it, or do you get a repeat? I don't know when the last time there was a repeat in hockey.
Oh, man.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'd have to dig that up. I mean, Florida has been, this would be Florida's third time in a row at the Stanley Cup, but they lost the first and won the second appearance. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely some fun stuff going on here in the conference finals for hockey and for basketball. Also, before we sign off real quickly, obviously, we've covered all the other major sports. We might as well get into NFL training camp getting underway here. We've got a couple storylines, post-draft and also with some teams near and dear to us, pretty close in our division there.
Yeah.
I mean, we can start in Cleveland or we can start in Chicago. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Cleveland because that's a big thing, right? Like, so the whole Shedeur Sanders thing, what happened? Well, how did he drop in the draft and stuff like that? And then you draft Dylan Gabriel also, and all these other kind of things and stuff like that. So what we're seeing coming out of there, they enter the camp with 5 quarterbacks, and because you got Kenny Pickett and you got Joe Flacco, and then whatever happens with Deshaun Watson, whatever. But so right now, QB1 looks to be Kenny Pickett,
which is crazy after everything.
But it's still a long road, but I think it's a battle because if you're gonna sit there and you're gonna say, okay, well, we're gonna go with Kenny Pickett, then you got to have Joe Flacco be your backup, right?
Of course,
like you
can't have 2 rookies.
Yeah, and so then it's like a battle between Gabriel and Shedeur to who's going to be QB3 at that point in time, right? And I think Deshaun Watson's the odd man out. Everybody wants him to be the odd man out, and all those
right,
because
he hasn't been released yet,
right?
And he hasn't been traded.
They're just trying to find a way to nullify his contract. Is basically at this point what it is. But yeah, so that's interesting. But so we'll see how that plays out. Does Pickett stay QB1? Do one of the rookies, or do they say, what, heck, let's go with Joe Flacco and let's make a run at it with this guy?
I mean, he brought him to the playoffs. What was it, 2 years ago? So I mean, listen, he's
won a farewell,
but he's also won a Super Bowl. So and actually, that's a fair point because we're about to talk about Chicago and the festivities that have gone on recently with Caleb Williams. Some word came out that he actually was trying to do everything possible to avoid getting drafted to Chicago.
He was thinking about it when it came out. He was trying to say, well, I'm going to go ahead and sign a 1-year deal with the UFL so that I can come in as a free agent to sign with the Minnesota Vikings because he wanted to be a Minnesota Viking. He didn't want to go to the Bears.
Is that not unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
And then you play your first season in Chicago now. Bears fans are kind of dumb, so they're all high horses. They love you, Caleb. You're their favorite that there ever had been.
They really don't. They really don't.
No, but in all seriousness, I gotta throw a little bows every now and again to the NFC North. But all kidding aside, no, it's a crazy situation because you can't. This stuff obviously was confidential. It was kept in private. So he was able to put on this persona. I want to be in Chicago. I want to be here. Now this comes out. A city like Chicago, Caleb, you're putting yourself in quite a situation.
It's
here.
A bad scene.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, it's new blood, and winning solves everything, right?
This is
so
true.
You got Brad Johnson coming in, and
Ben Johnson.
Brad
Johnson won
the Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah. But so you got Ben Johnson coming in and everything else, and so the question mark here is, well, okay, how do you transition from the hottest offensive coordinator in the league to a head coach? Does it because when you're an offensive coordinator, when the defense is on the field, you can turn around and talk to your players and look at your iPad and stuff like that and get ready for the next series.
Because you're honing in on one thing.
Exactly. And then when you're the head coach, no, you can't do it. And so,
I will say though, to Ben Johnson's credit there, he got to stand there and watch very closely a great head coach in Dan Campbell. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. As Lions fan, listen, I'm not going to sit here and wish ill will on Ben Johnson. Of course, do I want to beat him? Absolutely, right? But am I going to sit there and wish he goes 0-17? No. I will say a few of the things he said was a little hurtful, kind of dissing Goff a little bit, kind of talking about finally feeling comfortable.
Me that much, though.
See, but it's a different type. You've been through these type of situations, right? And you've been a Lions fan longer than I have, obviously, because age differences there. But it's my team, man. Don't talk trash about my Lions.
But the way I look at it is this: I feel like it's something that like Ben Johnson's got to do, right? Like you come from the rival, and now you're our guy, so he's gonna be like, yeah, I'm all in on being your guy.
Of course,
to prove that, I'm going to spit on where I came from. Kind of a thing, because everybody in the city wants to spit on where you came from. So then you do it, and you endear yourself to the city and to the organization that way. And I think that a lot of it's kind of lip service. It's gamesmanship and stuff like that. I don't take it too personal, because guess what? At the end of the day, we're going to beat you 2 times anyway.
Yeah.
So you can say all you want, and then we're gonna beat you 2 times, and then what happens?
And then that's that. And I think Dan Campbell is very capable of doing so. And in fact, I think that's one of, if not the most competitive division in football right now. You've got your other divisions like outside of the Raiders, Kansas City, the Chargers and the Broncos can be pretty fun. Kansas City's kind of back to reality. The Broncos and the Chargers are on the come up. Obviously, Washington and Philly, and then Dallas. I don't know what could happen there. Kind of similar situation, with the Rams and the Niners and then the Seahawks, and are the Cardinals maybe gonna do something? Who knows? So a lot of interesting stuff coming on in the NFL here. Training camp's underway. We'll have more updates, and we'll definitely be diving deeper into that as time goes on. While we're still on the topic of the NFL, though, Colts owner Jim Irsay passed away. Sad
news. 65 years old. So that's tough. It's tough. So for that organization and for his family, obviously for his family and stuff like that, that's tough to hear. On the other note too is George Wendt, Norm from Cheers, who all those years and everything like that, Normie, so that stuff's kind of tough. And
definitely an unfortunate situation. Prayers for the Colts organization and for their family as well, of course. And speaking of the Colts organization, they got Riley Leonard, Notre Dame man, Catholic man. They'll bring the faith there. He'll definitely make an impact on that team. I think he should be the starter going forward, but we'll dive into that next week as well.
There's a lot to
dive into
with the Steelers. And
the Steelers and all that. There's a lot we're gonna dive into.
But it's baseball season.
We got
conference finals. and all those kinds of things. And your big thing that's going on too. It's like, okay, well, now what's going to happen? John Cena.
Yeah,
And,
well, because you
with
mentioned
this
the conference
stuff.
finals, right? You got New York and you got Indiana. Well, a month or two ago on SmackDown, they were in the Garden there in New York, and Halliburton was there, and so was Brunson, and they actually both hopped the barricade and got into the ring, and were face to face. Brunson had a chair, and Halliburton was there with Logan Paul, kind of retreating, and they were kind of being like, whatever. So just imagine that, right? Imagine if Halliburton and Brunson would have been able to get into it in the ring. That would have been super cool. Leading up to this series, how awesome that would have been.
Hurt.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's why they didn't do anything. That's why it was just a stare down. But it was a precursor to this series, which is even cooler. And you mentioned, Halliburton teaming with Logan Paul after doing this to the Knicks fan in tribute to Reggie Miller there. Logan Paul goes up against Jey Uso on Saturday night's main event this Saturday in Tampa, Florida for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then you mentioned John Cena, his farewell retirement tour as a heel is full effect. He had his match against Randy Orton there. That starts what I believe is about to be just a couple months of him reliving old rivalries, but flipped. Obviously, his whole career, he was the baby face with the whole crowd on his back, the whole WWE Universe on his back, and now it's flipped. So after all those years of fighting all these nasty guys who were so bad guys and were just, wanted to end his career. Now it's flipped around. I mean, you had him versus Orton. Orton was a good guy. Weird. He's got this little funsies match against R-Truth on Saturday night's main event. When they went back at Capital Punishment 2010, R-Truth was the bad guy. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, I anticipate him going up against CM Punk, pretty soon here. And last time they went, Punk was the heel, Cena was a good guy. So the whole thing is flipped around. I know when we first talked about Cena going heel, it's like, it's forced, it's weird, it doesn't make sense. But Triple H and The Rock have said time and time again, we're playing a long game here. Trust the process. I promise you'll be satisfied. And you know what, guys? As WWE fans, we ought to listen, because after the first WrestleMania Hollywood there, when Cody lost to Roman, we were pissed off. And we were like, this is stupid. Why did Roman retain? He's been the champ for 1,000 days. This is dumb. And then WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia was one of the greatest endings to WrestleMania in the history of ever. So trust the process, trust the long game here. I have a feeling that next year's WrestleMania and even SummerSlam is going to be a pretty awesome entertainment spectacle there. So we got a lot going on here coming up, man. SummerSlam's right around the corner. Football season's right around the corner. The MLB All-Star Game's right around the corner. We got the Stanley Cup and the NBA Finals coming up. We've got a jam-packed, exciting summer coming up, full of events and full of awesome stuff going on. So
and we
I
get
can't
to,
even
and we
contain
get to go
myself.
on site, on location, and do all those kinds of stuff like that. So it'll be a lot of fun. And but yeah. So who knows if I could have done this.
It wouldn't have mattered if you would have done that or not.
Painting corners.
You can't challenge a ball that's 20 feet outside the zone.
Corners.
Any whoosies, but yeah, back here in
squeezed.
Back here in Ohio, we will definitely be active this summer. Make sure you follow our TikTok, our Instagram, and also subscribe here on YouTube. We are going to be very active this summer. A lot of fun stuff planned. We're really excited about it. So make sure you guys are followed and ready for the ride, because it's going to be a good one. So, anything?
Nope. I got nothing except for this.
Go Tigers. They don't need that.